Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to impartially unpack the deeply rooted ethical framework surrounding abortion. We'll be using direct source material to really understand the different sides of this incredibly complex issue. Whether you're navigating theology, secular philosophy, or the strict boundaries of medical law, understanding how different groups actually value human life is absolutely crucial. We're not here to take sides today. Instead, we're going to objectively map out the ideas that shape one of the most profound debates in human history. Let's get into it.
Okay, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start by defining the core value of life, then explore the Christian concept of Imago Dei through St. Catherine of Siena. After that, we'll check out the secular humanist perspective, followed by the biological realities of gestation, and finally, how all of this shapes the UK abortion law.
Section 1. Defining the value of life. We're looking at two core perspectives. So right off the bat, we hit this massive philosophical tension. On one side, you've got the sanctity of life. This is the religious view that life is literally a sacred gift from God. It's unique, it has immense value, and it has to be protected. On the flip side, we have the quality of life view, held by secular thinkers. For them, life is incredibly special too, but for a totally different reason. Well, it's the only life we get, so it's up to us to shape it.
Now, if we look at the Christian foundations, human life gets its unique value straight from the Bible. In Genesis 1, humans aren't just another part of the world. They are the grand finale, the absolute highest point of God's creation. Genesis 2 gets even more intimate. God actively breathes the breath of life, meaning the soul, into Adam. And then Jeremiah drops this incredibly powerful line, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." And the Catholic Church traditionally uses these texts to argue that life is absolutely sacred from the very second of conception. However, it's worth noting that other Christian denominations interpret things a bit differently. They'll sometimes weigh these biblical texts against concepts like compassion, which can lead them to support early abortion or specific exceptions in really extreme circumstances.
Moving to Section 2. Imago Dei and St. Catherine, exploring what's known as the mirror of goodness.
To really grasp the Catholic view, we need to talk about St. Catherine of Siena. She was a figure of deep faith who actively spent time with sinners and outcasts. And she uses this amazing mirror analogy. She writes about a soul returning to God, and she compares it to looking into the mirror of the goodness of God. It's a really profound thought. When you look into that perfect divine goodness, you recognize your own immense God-given dignity. But, you also see your own flaws and the indignity caused by human fault staring right back at you.
And that brings us to a huge, absolutely crucial exam definition, Imago Dei. It literally translates to the image of God. This concept is the total bedrock for the fundamentalist moral response. Think of it like a giant wax seal. Humans bear the direct, unique imprint of their creator. St. Catherine taught that human dignity isn't something you go out and earn. It's just a free gift of grace, simply because of how you were made.
If you're taking notes, here's the logical flow of her teaching on how the soul actually empowers moral decision-making. We have value because God made us. God freely gives us a soul by grace. It's through that soul that we get a conscience. And finally, that conscience is what gives us the unique ability to reason and figure out right from wrong. The main strength of this view is that it gives everyone, universally, this unshakable dignity. The weakness? Well, for a secular society, it relies entirely on a faith-based belief in a soul, which isn't exactly something you can empirically prove in a lab.
All right, Section 3. Let's flip the script and look at the humanist perspective, finding our own meaning. For humanists, there's no divine creator and no afterlife, so the focus shifts 100% to the here and now. They totally reject the idea of a prepackaged, universal meaning of life handed down from above. Instead, they believe it's our job, and really our privilege, to actively figure out and create our own meaning with the time we have. Without a divine creator in the picture, the quality of life metric becomes the ultimate way to make moral decisions. This directly clashes with the Catholic Imago Dei view. Take the philosopher Peter Singer, for example. He argues against what he famously calls speciesism. He basically says, hey, just having human DNA doesn't automatically give you a higher moral status than other conscious creatures. For Singer, the value of life is based on the capacity to feel pain and experience a future. Therefore, the individual is really the only one who can decide if their quality of life is worth continuing. The strength here is a super practical focus on reducing suffering, but the weakness is that the value of life becomes highly conditional and subjective.
Section 4. Gestation and early life. Having established that philosophical clash,
let's look at the biological reality. We absolutely have to nail down our biological terms here because different groups draw the start line for life at totally different points in this exact process. First, we have conception, that initial spark, the point of fertilization. Some folks argue life starts right there because the egg and sperm combine to form a living source of life, but others draw the line a bit later at implantation. That's when the fertilized egg successfully attaches to the wall of the womb.
When we look at the physical milestones directly from the source, it's wild. You witness these rapid changes from a cluster of cells into a recognizable human form. And honestly, this continuous biological path is the exact center of the whole debate. At what specific point on this continuous curve do rights and personhood actually attach? Let's break that curve down into specific weeks. At 0 weeks, conception. Then, skip to 9 weeks, we hit quickening, which is when the first movements in the womb are felt. Historically, some thought this was the magic moment perceptible life begins. But notice the really crucial one, the 24-week mark, known as viability. This is the stage where the developing baby could theoretically survive outside the womb. And finally, 40 weeks is birth, where many believe life properly starts. Keep that 24-week viability mark locked in your mind, because it heavily influences both ethical debates and legal boundaries. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, UK Abortion Law. Let's look at the legal frameworks and cutoffs. So how does the law actually function as a baseline up to that biological milestone? Well, under the 1967 Act in England, Scotland, and Wales, abortion is legal, but highly regulated. You can't just do it anywhere. It has to be in a hospital or a specially licensed clinic. You absolutely need 2 separate doctors to agree on it. And, tying right back to what we just discussed, the standard limit is tied directly to viability. The woman must be less than 24 weeks pregnant. On top of that, it must be deemed necessary to prevent grave damage to the physical or mental health of the pregnant woman or any of her existing children.
But there are some very specific, really grave exceptions where termination remains legal even after that 24-week viability mark. For instance, if the pregnancy poses a serious, direct threat to the woman's actual life or health, that 24-week limit gets bypassed entirely. The law also makes an exception if there's a substantial risk that the child will be born with severe physical or mental abnormalities that result in serious disability.
And what about absolute medical emergencies? Well, if time is of the essence to save a life, that standard requirement of getting a second doctor's sign-off is completely waived. By the way, quick caveat here. It is super important to note that Northern Ireland operates under a totally different set of legal frameworks regarding this issue.
So, wrapping up this explainer, I want to leave you with a massive question. We've seen how Christians view the sanctity of life through the lens of Imago Dei and St. Catherine's teachings, and how humanists prioritize the quality of life and personal autonomy. But when you walk through those hospital doors, these deeply held, abstract philosophies slam right into the hard biological realities of gestation and the rigid 24-week legal cutoffs of the UK system. How on earth do we balance a sacred view of creation with an individual's right to determine their own quality of life, all while staying within the confines of the law? It's a puzzle that continues to challenge ethicists, lawmakers, and individuals every single day. Thanks for joining me as we unpack the source material today. Keep questioning the frameworks that shape our world,